Aggro decks in Hearthstone are fast, furious, and fantastic. And in this video, I'm going to be showing you how they work, the principles behind them, giving you a few examples of aggro decks, and showing you one in a real match situation. So, pull up a chair, and let's play Hearthstone. So, come, my friends. Let me tell you about aggro decks in Hearthstone. Now, in our previous tutorials in deck dissection, we looked at a mid-range mage deck, or a basic mage deck. And a mid-range deck essentially has a few small minions, and here you can see a few examples, a few mid-range minions, and here you can see a few examples, and a few really big minions and spells. Small meaning kind of 1, 2, 3, mid being kind of like 3, 4, and then big kind of being 5, 6, 7, 8, and maybe plus if you've got some kind of massive legendaries or giants kind of going on. And a mid-range deck seeks to kind of play some decent minions at each stage of the game. Okay, but this tutorial is about aggro. So what's aggro? An aggro deck seeks to take out this top end and just fill the deck with loads and loads of small stuff to be played out very quickly. And the real difference with an aggro deck versus a mid-range deck is an aggro deck doesn't seek to trade minions. It doesn't want to kind of just do the, what we've talked about, kind of favorable trades, getting control of the board and then attack. An aggro deck wants to attack right now. And from the moment they play minions, they're going to be going face. That means, attacking your hero straight away, and trying to finish you off, very early, maybe as early as turn 4, turn 5, and trying to take you down that way. So here's a few kind of famous examples. This is the Shockadin deck, and if you just Google Shockadin, you'll get a few results. Obviously, there aren't like exact, I'm saying Shockadin, but there's a few variations of Shockadin, but the principle is that this is a Paladin deck, which is very fast. And if you look, you can see, look at that huge amount of 1-cost cards that we've got there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Then look at the amount of 2-cost cards. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Look at the amount of 3-cost cards, and then look at the complete lack of endgame. You've got 2 6-cost cards and 1 5, and then that's it. Everything else is lower. So this deck is guaranteed to draw a lot of early game. So in those first few turns, turn 1, turn 2, turn 3, turn 4, you're going to be playing out minions as fast as possible, playing out spells, playing out damage to the face, and trying to kill your opponent before they get a chance to respond. That's the key with aggro. You just want to, before they even kind of know what's hit them, you want to have a board full of stuff, and you're doing 5 damage every turn, 6 damage every turn, 7 damage every turn, and then the game is over. So have a look at the kind of cards that work well. You want minions that you can play on turn 1 and turn 2. The Leper Gnome is one of the best aggro cards there is, because he costs 1, he does 2 damage, and when you kill him, he does another 2 damage. So if you can play him, hit the face, and then he gets killed by something else, you've just done 4 damage to the face for 1-cost mana. If you can hit the face twice, you've done 2 damage plus 2 damage, and then he dies, you've done 6 damage. So he's like your principal aggro card. If you see him, you know you're facing aggro. And there's a few other cards that are kind of similar along those kind of lines. The Bluegill Warrior is a very quick kind of charge card. Things like the Abusive Sergeant, which give a minion plus 2 attack. I mean, that's really cheap as well. You play your Leper Gnome turn 1, you play the Abusive Sergeant turn 2, you buffs your Leper Gnome up to 4 damage, and so you're looking for that quick damage all the time. Then you've got things like Wolf Rider, which is again is a charge. So charge is something you'll see a lot in aggro decks. And then things like weapons and spell damage, because weapons do instant damage. You play the weapon, you hit it straight away, you get more damage the next turn. Hammer of Wrath, spell damage, it's instant damage. So all the time in aggro decks, you're just kind of like, hit that face, hit that face, hit that face, hit that face, hit that face. You'll normally have a few cards which will allow you to get past taunts or things that will stop you attacking the face. So for example, there's an Ironbeak Owl here which says silence a minion. So you're busy hitting the face and your opponent goes, here is my Sludge Belcher, or here is my Sen'jin Shieldmaster. You haven't got enough stuff on the board to kill it, and if you do, well, you've wiped out your whole board. So instead, you just play the Iron Beak Owl and you silence the taunt, and then you go, see ya, and you just hit the face some more, and and you go straight past them. Equality from the Paladin is here for the same reason. You hit Equality, that, he plays something really big, and you're like, oh my god, you play Equality, you just hit it with one of your minions, one of your minion dies, his big one dies, and then you carry on hitting the face with everything else. So normally in aggro decks, there'll be a bunch of stuff to hit the face quickly, and there'll be a few cards that are there to kind of undo any kind of barriers that your opponent sets in your way. There will often then be a few cards in an aggro deck which are there to kind of finish them off. They'll normally be a little bit more expensive, but you'll get your opponent down to about 10 health, 8 health, and that's the point where they will start being able to put things on the board, and then so you'll need a few cards just to do that final push, that final wham. And in this particular deck, we've got Leroy Jenkins, which does an instant 6 damage, which of course you could buff up with Blessing of Might or an Abusive Sergeant, or an Avenging Wrath, which deals 8 damage randomly split. So you kind of use them a little bit later. If the game starts going longer, you play out those bigger cards. But again, it's instant damage to try and finish off your opponent. So that's the Shockadin deck. Let's talk downsides though of aggro, because let's think about it. You start with 4 cards in your hand. Okay, and if you're going on turn 1, then you start with 3, and then it adds another before you play it. And if you're all going on turn 2, you start with 4, and then it adds another. So it's all either 4 or 5, but let's call it turn 4. You play 1 card on turn 1. You'll play another card on turn 2, but then on turn 3, you might play another 2 cards, but you've drawn another kind of 2 or 3 by this stage. On turn 4, you're going to play another 2 cards. Oops, I'm swearing at the camera. On turn 5, you try and play another 2 cards, and then you've run out of cards because you are playing more than 1 card almost every turn. Now, that's great from the damage perspective because you're just doing damage, but your hand will run out so quickly when you play an aggro deck. And this is the thing. When you play aggro, it's a race. Can you kill them before they get their minions out and stop you? Can you kill them before you run out of cards? Can you kill them before their higher health minions are able to defeat your vicious but very fragile small minions? So it is always a race with aggro, and you'll find you'll either win by about turn 6 or you aren't going to win. Okay, you might get lucky a little bit later. You might kind of, if you get them down to like 4 or 5 damage, and then you draw that spell, and it's like, yeah. But once you've lost that board control, you have lost it. So you've got to be ultra aggressive when playing an aggro deck for that reason. Now, there are often one of the reasons why Shockadin has been so popular is it's got this card here called Divine Favor. Draw cards until you have as many in hand as your opponent, and it's a rare card. So that basically means your opponent's sitting there with his like 6, 7 cards. Maybe he's played a few spells, maybe 1 minion. You're sitting there with your like 1 card, 2 cards, because you've played all of them, and then you play Divine Favor, and your hand fills up, and you go again. Here's the rest of my minions. Cold Light Oracle. Each player draws 2 cards. Now, normally you'd say, well, I don't want to do that because it's giving my opponent cards. That's a terrible idea. But when you're playing aggro, the cards in your hand are more important than the cards in his hand because you're trying to do that damage quickly. So most aggro decks will have something in there that lets them replenish their hand. If it starts, when it starts to run out, it's not an if, when it starts to run out, you get that, you'll have something in there that will try and let you draw it. Aggro decks are also very draw dependent. Now, draw dependent means, you need to draw the right cards at the right time. And some people don't like aggro decks for those reasons because they are so, reliant on making sure you've got something to play turn 1, something turn 2, some more things to play turn 3, and then get some more card draw on maybe turn 5, when you're getting kind of desperate. Here's an aggro mage version. This one's a kind of more recent deck, as you can see that you've got the Nax Ramos card here, Undertaker, Mad Scientist. But the principle is the same. Again, low mana curve here. Damage spells, Frostbolt, Fireballs. Knife Juggler works nicely because that, as you play the Knife Juggler and then follow up with lots of other minions, the knives go flying out and take out other kind of minions or hit the face more. Mad Scientist is a good aggro deck because when he dies, if he dies, then he draws another card and plays it straight away, which again helps you to get through your deck. Mirror Entity means that not only is whenever your opponent plays a card, you actually get a version of that card too, so it gives you more minions to hit the face with. Mirror's Image. This is instead of card draw, this one's actually kind of defending a little bit because the Mirror Image puts up 2 taunts, which allows your other small minions to carry on hitting the face. While the opponent's trying to get through them. There's a counter spell in here because aggro is very, very vulnerable to area of effect spells. You put out your line of little your little kind of one cost, two cost minions. You know, they've all got really low health, but they're chipping away, and then your opponent plays a Consecration or a Flame Strike or a Lightning Storm, and your whole board just goes and you're dead. So this deck has a counter spell. So you put all your minions out, you play counter spell, and then your opponent can't play that area of effect. So there's just little kind of techniques you can use here. Blood Mage Thalnos gives +1 spell damage and draws a card. In this particular deck, you've got the Arcane Intellect, which allows you to draw more cards. The Sorcerer's Apprentice, which makes your spells cheaper, which again means you can play more out on those early turns. But aggro decks are really fun. They are fun. They are not always reliable, and you will sometimes be like, I just can't win a game. But when it works, you'll win so early on. You'll be like, this game is so easy. Now, aggro decks have adapted in that when I first started playing Hearthstone just a few months ago, you very much had, this is a mid-range deck, this is a aggro deck, this is a control deck. But since the Naxxramas has come along, with cards like, again, the Undertaker and Mad Scientist, there's been a rise of decks which are, they're kind of more mid-rangey, but they have very strong aggro starts. And this Undertaker, which if you've been playing Hearthstone at all, you'll have seen similar decks to this, at the start of the game has a really strong aggro start. They always try and play Undertaker turn 1, Coin turn 1 if you've got it, and maybe Web Spin or Leper Gnome, and then all of a sudden you've got a 2-3 and a 2-1 on the board at the same time, and you're instantly chipping away. And again, then they follow up with Haunted Creepers and Loot Hoarders and Mad Scientists, and they go for these really fast starts, which is just like an aggro deck. But as the game starts to turn, these kind of style decks then have a few big threats to go into the game as well. Savannah Highmane, Sludge Belcher, maybe a Lothieb are in there as well, just to kind of like, if the game starts to go long, you know, they can fight with you. You know, they can survive a little bit longer than the others. And plus, a character like Hunter is always dangerous because of that hero power. 2 damage, 2 damage, 2 damage, 2 damage. So if they get you down to 12 health in the first, say, 5 turns, and then you turn it round, you might think you're safe, but we've got 2 Eagle Horn Bows, we've got 2 kill commands, we've got the hero power all the time. You know, they can not only go aggro, but they can fight you in the mid-range with a Sludge Belcher, and then they can just keep that damage going. So that's another kind of style of deck to be watchful for. The other one, which we'll talk about in more depth in a future video, is Zoolock or Warlock Zoo, which again has elements of aggro in that it takes control of the board very, very fast, but it normally seeks to kind of trade more than it does to hit the face. So it's kind of some people kind of play it aggro, but other people kind of play it as a kind of a trading board control one. But those are the principles of aggro. Lots of low cost minions, damage spells, charge minions, replenishing your hand spells or minions, and face damage. That's the idea. Let's check out an aggro deck in action. So, let's try out the aggro mage deck that we have. Now, normally I'd be very happy with a 2 in my hand, but this is a particular occasion, we want the 1s. We want the Leper Gnome, the Mana Worm, the Undertaker. So I'm actually going to throw all of this back to maximize my chances of getting something that I can play on turn 1, and then hopefully we'll then draw something I can get on turn 2. And of course we've got the coin, so if all else goes wrong, we can build up to the bigger things. But luckily we've got ourselves a nice Leper Gnome here. Now, if this match is going to go well, then we want to do as much face damage as possible in the early few turns to allow us to finish him off with something else a little bit later. But if the match goes very, very, very well, he might never be able to deal with our torrent of minions that we play at the beginning of the game. And I recorded one just now where the match started very, very aggressively. It was with the Shockadin deck. And then he played a couple of board clears, and then he played a taunt. But because I'd managed to do so much damage early on, the game, I still won. You know, he turned it around, he got control of the board, but I just had a couple of damage spells, and then that was enough. And what he's doing here is he's doing exactly what he should do. He's gone, hang on a minute, that was a Leper Gnome. Ding, 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 or that was an Undertaker. You know, he's spotted, this is an aggressive deck I'm facing. So it's going to be his job to deal with my threats. It's going to be my job to try and hit his face. And so there's a kind of a competition going on between us here. You know, I am going to be going for him. Can he stop me? And we're going to be kind of playing as fast as possible. I'm certainly going to be playing as fast as possible to kind of get that damage going. And to that end, I haven't got a minion in hand, which is frustrating, you know, especially with so many other kind of minions in there. If I play Arcane Intellect, and I can't play anything else this turn, so I think the best thing for us to do here is to play Mirror Entity. So if he does play a minion, we get to use that minion against him the turn afterwards. He's obviously trying to deal with the threat the only way he can, which is using his weapon, but in some ways that's kind of playing into my hands because it's doing additional damage. But he's kind of using, he has got a spell to deal with it the next time round. Any sign of a minion from him? No. But we finally do have our Undertaker, which is great. So let's play Arcane Intellect. Very nice. So now we'll play out the Undertaker, and hopefully next turn we'll be able to buff it with the Leper Gnome and follow up either with a mirror image, bunch of mirror images to protect them, or perhaps a counter spell to try and protect them from whatever else he is going to try and throw at me. But sadly, there's a backstab.
This guy's toast.
And now our mirror entity comes into play. As we now have our own minion that he played. Now, part of one of the key things here in this deck is the mirror image, which is that it's designed to work with a knife juggler, but it also protects the other minions while I do damage to him. So we're actually going to play a few things here. We're going to play the Leper Gnome. We're going to play the mirror image to protect what we've got there already. And then we've got a choice between the counter spell and the mirror entity. Now, rogues play lots and lots and lots and lots of spells. And I'm sure he will try and play one next turn to get rid of what's here. So I'm going to play the counter spell to try and keep what I've got on the board there already. Because in theory, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on the board, damage on the board, plus my hero power, plus we've got a fireball in hand, plus we've got an ice lance in hand, which hopefully we could combo with a frostbolt later on. So, you know, if we can keep going what we've got going, we're okay. So we've got Thalmos, which is going to be good for some additional damage and some card draw. And we're just going to carry on firing into here. Now we've got to have a little think about whether it's right to play the Blood Mage at this point. I could Blood Mage and Fireball straight into him to get kind of additional damage kind of out of him straight away. And that might actually be the best play because, you know, 7 damage would take him down to 7, and then he's going to have issues 1, 2, 3, and that would use all of my mana as well, and give me a card when he dies. So with a deck like this, you don't always need to think about saving things because you want to just get the damage as soon as possible. So we're in a reasonably strong position here. We've got a counter spell in play. We've got 3 minions on the board. We've got a taunt protecting them. We've got a potential additional damage with the ice lance if we get a good draw out of it. And this is what aggro is about. It's turn 6. You know, it is turn 6, and we already are in a position whereby we could threaten lethal next turn. He's got minions. He's gonna use his minions to kind of destroy our minions here. So, you know, the game is not yet over. However, when the Leper Gnome dies, we are going to get another 2 damage out of it. We've countered his preparation, which is good. Sadly, it wasn't a damage spell, so he might have another one there. So that's going to take him down to 5, and he's quit. And he's quit. He's had enough. He looked at his card. He looked at what we had. He's decided he couldn't possibly do it, and we won. So there we go. That is a version of an aggro deck. But, you know, do check them out, see how they work. I'm sure you can find lots of videos online of people using aggro decks. Be careful of anything with an Undertaker or a Leper Gnome, and also be careful of that Hunter-Taker deck that will start like an aggro and then suddenly go big, or those zoo decks that kind of are very aggressive, but they'll trade with your minions as well. But it's a good, fun deck class to play. If you've enjoyed watching me, enjoy this tutorial, you've learned something, please give the video a like, subscribe to the channel, and come over and join me on Twitch as well. Twitch.tv/TheAdiposeTV, when you can interact with me and the rest of my posse live. You have been fantastic. And you know what? So was I. Goodbye.